With limited or not even a lot of macro news, we found ourselves with 30 different news headlines for the weekly summary. Let's summarize the week. Let's look at the markets. And of course, let's talk about the 50-day moving average. We were under, now we're above. What's about to happen? Are you ready for it? Then let's go. Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. If you're new, welcome. My name is Micha Stocks, and on this channel, we talk about stocks. We talk about the weekly summary. Everything and anything that you see on this channel is, of course, not financial advice. It's only for educational and entertainment purpose only. And if we're talking about our channel, this is how it looks like. 3.3K subscribers. It would be amazing if you can also subscribe if you're new to the channel. Let's dive in directly to the news. As I mentioned, not a lot of macro news, but the market loves it. Look at the different indices. The Russell up 1.1%, NASDAQ up 1.5%, S&P up 1.85%. This is for the week, of course. And the Dow, 8 consecutive green days, 2.16%. An amazing week for the markets. S&P is up almost 10% from the beginning of the year. We're back. We're 0.5% from all-time high on the S&P. Look at the indices. Those were the averages. Sorry, look at the indices. All of them on the green. Utilities with an amazing 2 weeks run. After being super oversold, they came back with a vengeance and they're up 4%. After that, we find the financials up 3% and materials up 2.5%. When we look at the crypto market, that doesn't look that good. Bitcoin is down 3.3% for the week, and Ethereum down 4.8% for the week. Natural gas rebounding above $2 and is now 5% up for the week. On the flip side, we see crude oil up only 0.2%. Both silver and gold up 1.5% and 3% between both of them. And the magnificent, let's call the Magnificent Six. Why call the Magnificent Seven? There's at least one that shouts out, says, I don't want to be part of the Magnificent Seven, hence I'm down 7%. That's, of course, is Tesla. We see Meta up 5.3%, Microsoft up almost 2%, and Apple also red, but almost on. So those are the Magnificent Seven. When these stocks are up, the whole market is up because of the percentage they hold in the S&P and also in the NASDAQ. You can hear a lot of people talking about their percentage and their weight in the averages, and I'm thinking it in a different way. If we know that they have a very high percentage, let's say between 20 to 30% in the S&P and in the NASDAQ, and we know how to follow these stocks, then we know to predict where the averages would go. Why would we fight that? We're retail investors. We should enjoy that and just understand that. And when we dive into the heat map, this is how it looks like. Mainly red, maybe mainly green, except as usual, Apple and Tesla. That will bring us to the headlines of the week. But just before that, we had a lot of companies. We're almost, I think we're around 85% of the S&P 500 companies that have reported already. We had a week with a lot of the smaller companies. Again, is there a lesson that we learned this week from these companies? The answer is some of them already started lowering their predictions for Q2 and the rest of the year, which might be a bit alarming, but CEOs are not mentioning inflation anymore. CEOs are not talking about raising salaries and things like that. So it seems like the market is back to normal. Companies beating are going up. Companies that are missing are going down. Weekly jobless claims came as a surprise. 231,000 was expected 214, which means that there was a higher jobless claims. A higher jobless claims is something that the market interprets as good because it means that the Fed can start thinking or actually acting on lowering rates. And that's why we saw a green market this week. Apple during the weekend, we get a note that says that they might have already signed a deal with OpenAI to include ChatGPT capabilities or features into the next iPhone update. President Xi, the Chinese president, had a tour in Europe, went to a lot of countries. Not all of them planned. Very interesting to see the involvement of the Chinese president in Europe. We hear from Ford that is cutting their EV battery orders because they are limiting the amount of EVs that they're selling after figuring out that they're losing $100,000 per vehicle. Taiwan Semi reported on Friday that during April, their sales soared 60%. Who are they selling, or actually, who are they manufacturing for? NVIDIA, AMD, and Micron. They, of course, rose due to that news. Novavax signs a multi-billion-dollar deal. Their ticker is NVAX with Sanofi, the French company, to commercialize COVID vaccine. Amazing news for Novavax. For Sanofi, it's a drop in the water. For Novavax, it's a lifeline to save them. During this week, we are supposed to hear Monday or Tuesday, Biden's administration is set to impose tariffs, which, at least from what I've heard on Friday, is going to quadruple the tariffs on Chinese EVs, meaning we don't want Chinese EVs in the US. And the big question is, will the Chinese retaliate? Now, Ford loses a lot of money in China. They don't care. GM loses a lot of money in China. They don't care. Which brings us again to Tesla, which might care. And that would be very interesting to see if the Chinese will retaliate and do the same thing to Tesla. That might be very, very painful for the stock. CrowdStrike and Google Cloud are forging a stronger relationship, cybersecurity ties. That's, of course, puts CrowdStrike at the lead of the cyber companies. Roblox with a very, very bad prediction for their next few quarters. They at least explained on their earnings call after dropping 30% that they released an update during the last few months for Android phones, that the update wasn't good. Guess what happened to their revenues, or to the predicted revenues? They said they fixed it, but that, of course, slowed their sales. Buybacks are back in town. Buybacks, if you're new to the concept is companies that are, of course, public companies create a lot of shares at the beginning when they IPO or when they want to raise capital, and after having a huge pile of cash, they start buying back their stock. In theory, a buyback is good because it reduces the amount of shares outstanding, and it means that the earnings per share, if it's the same number, if you have less shares, it means that the number would go up. It's something that helps a lot of companies increase their EPS, their earnings per share, without actually earning more, because if you're just reducing the amount of shares, your EPS would go higher. Now, is it so bad? Not so much, because we are now up 16% year over year with the share buybacks. It means that there is a huge buyer in the market, which is called the companies, and they're buying back their stock. And if they're increasing their buyback, it means that they're pushing the market up, which is good on one hand, but also kind of, let's call it financial play around with the money. Disney and Warner Brothers are ramping up a streaming service. They are supposed to launch it during the summer to combat Netflix. They're not growing, they're losing money, and they're trying to figure out a way to stop that. If you're an FTX customer, a good and a bad news. The good news is you're probably going to get your money back plus interest. The bad news, you're not going to get the growth that let's say your assets made. So again, a quick explanation. Let's say you had $10,000 in FTX, invested in Bitcoin. Bitcoin, from the moment that FTX lost everything, went up, let's say 100%, which means that you now in theory have $20,000, but you're only going to get $10,000. So at least you're getting 10 and not 0. Costco reporting April sales up 7% year over year. Red Sea disruption continues, which means that shipping companies are seeing or are able to increase rates for their customers and deliver better earnings, probably going to deliver better earnings. Boeing keeps crashing. This is a FedEx Boeing plane not landing on the front wheels because they were not there. This is a Boeing plane in Senegal, as you can see, not landing where it should. Plane after plane after plane, Boeing is in huge trouble. And that's only the beginning, because they have 10 more whistleblowers, 10 more, that are supposed to come and testify about all the wrongdoings of Boeing. And there was an interesting question on TV this week. They asked someone, "Do you prefer being their lawyer or being their CEO?" He said, "Being their lawyer, because I'm gonna charge them by the hour." So that's Boeing for you. We talked about that. iPhone sales during March actually jumped 12% after Apple reduced the price in China. Maybe they should do the same thing in the US. If they reduce the price, they might get more sales of iPhone. And during this week, Apple launched new iPads. Thinner, stronger, faster, but will they create an upgrade cycle? Probably not, because there's nothing exciting about them. Yes, there was a commercial. Yes, they're not going to broadcast it anymore because it offended a lot of people. But at the end of the day, if you want to buy an iPad, you'll just buy the iPad. If it's the newest, it's the newest. But if you have an iPad and it works, would you upgrade to the new version? I'm not so sure. And I think that's a big problem for Apple. Tesla. During the week, actually, the beginning of the week, there were a lot of rumors coming from China that the Chinese are pending approval of robotaxi in China for Tesla. Would be very interesting. Uber Eats is combining with Instacart to deliver, to have deliveries through Uber Eats, purchases that are being done with Instacart. The Biden administration revokes the export license for Intel and Qualcomm to Huawei. This means that Intel already did it during the week. Probably Qualcomm will do it as well. Going to reduce their revenue prediction for their next quarters. Peloton is looking for someone to take it private. Their assets are worth something. According to the market right now, they're not really worth anything. And a private firm might take them private and then try to milk that cow. Costco took delivery of their Tesla Semi. Now we have Costco using it, Walmart using it, PepsiCo using it, and maybe even more big chains are using it. It's very interesting to hear. Apple developing a chip, an AI chip and AI software for data centers, also very interesting. NIO targeting smaller and cheaper cars, mainly to Europe, again, because of the tariffs of the Biden administration. They see that in China and in Europe, there's a huge demand for lower cost EVs. And if they can fulfill that, they might start growing again. The SEC, we talked about Boeing, so we keep talking about Boeing. Now the SEC is looking into, did Boeing or should have Boeing exposed more information to investors about all their problems in the planes. Howard Schultz from Starbucks, you probably remember him, the two-term CEO. During the weekend, yes, published on LinkedIn, on his LinkedIn, a long letter to Starbucks management and board saying, you got to get your together. Saying that you got to come back and focus on customer experience, not only on the transactions that are being done in the stores, reduce the lines, make everything faster, have the barista have more time to talk to customers. Well, or it's going to be his third time in Starbucks, or maybe he knows something that we don't know. And of course, this spooks investors. If you're invested in EV, this political headline might frighten you a bit. Trump, during the week, at least rumors that came out, met oil CEOs and told them that he is going to limit the EVs. He's going to reduce all the grants and the benefits that EV companies are getting, but he needs $1 billion for his campaign. Or let's say it on the flip side, if you provide me $1 billion in my political campaign, I will limit EVs. And this last slide gives you an understanding of where the money is going to come from in the next decades to the S&P 500 and to the other places. As you can see, 70% of the household assets are being held from 55 to, let's say, 100-year-old people. This is the major asset in the US, and this will be a huge wealth transfer to 40 to 54 and under 40, which of course have 30% of their assets. This means that the younger population, which knows the market, knows internet or grew up to the internet era and sees everything that's going on right now, are going to inherit around 100 or 80 trillion of wealth. This is dramatic. And of course, this will create the next, let's say, cycle for the S&P. So everyone is asking themselves, how will the S&P keep going up? Because of all these assets that will be transferred from one generation to the other. Those were all the headlines. Let's talk about next week. So we're going to start next week actually with the sentiment. Look at the AAII sentiment vote. Currently, the bullish sentiment is back. We are now at 40%, higher than the historical average. Usually, this marks short-term top. Short-term top means everyone is so excited. That's usually the time where you need to kind of take some of the chips off the table. When we look at the fear and greed, we moved from fear to neutral. That happened on Friday, which means that we might see a bit of a correction, but not something dramatic in the next few days. All of this will be, of course, seen with all the earnings. You can see them here. Not the big companies, of course, smaller companies. Everyone is waiting for the week after where NVIDIA is going to report. Maybe they're going to change it eventually and move NVIDIA closer to the big Magnificent Seven. We will have this week, we'll have Cisco, Applied Materials, Walmart, Home Depot, Alibaba, and others, but it's not the big tech companies. And that brings us to the economic calendar. On Wednesday, I don't know where the Zoom went, on Wednesday, May 15th, 8:30 a.m., we are, of course, Eastern, we are going to get CPI. This CPI is very, very crucial to the market. The reason why it's crucial is because after several months of reducing the amount of rate cuts, after the jobless claims, we might be at a point where if CPI comes cooler than expected, we might see the number of rate cuts increase. If we see the number of rate cuts increase, it means that the market will feel like there's a wind of change. If there's a wind of change, you know where the market's going to go. But that's only going to be more evident on Wednesday. And that will brings us to the S&P 500. As you remember, we look at it every week and we look at the 50-day moving average. This moving average represents the average price 50 days ago. And it keeps updating every day. What we see right now, and I'll put it in a line so it'll be easier to understand, we were underneath the 50-day moving average. In the last few days, we went above it. It's a good sign. It means that we have momentum, we have speed, we have strength. But, and here comes the big but, we are now seeing the exhaustion of the buyers. You can see here on this area, this is the volume area. You can see that the volume is drying out. When volume is drying out, usually it gives you a clear sign that buyers are starting to weaken, and usually that is the time where sellers are coming into the market. If that happens, it means that we might see a correction. Again, not a huge one. 50 days, 51.41. We would like to test it as support. We would like to see the S&P making sure that it comes down a bit and then turning around, buyers come in and push it all the way up to all-time highs. Everything will, again, correlate to Wednesday's CPI, and we will see what the CPI would bring us. I hope you enjoyed the weekly summary. If you did, you can share it with your friends. Smash the like button. I will be here next week, same time, same place, weekly summary. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.